Welcome to Coffee with Joy. I'm your favorite host, Joy, with Coffee with Joy Talk Show podcast. So excited to have you all here. Well, today I have my guest, Dr. Martine, who's a social worker who has her own business. And today you're probably wondering, okay, in depth, what is a social worker? Are they only just for schools? Are they only just for elderly? Or who are they for? Or what do they do? So she's going to give us a rundown and just talk a little bit about social work and so forth. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow Coffee with Joy. And please, if you would like to patronize our company, please make sure that you follow our QR codes, which will follow after our segment, that you'll be able to, any amount will do. So after these messages, we're going to talk to my guest, Dr. Martine. Your business on our podcast. Connect with us, the Coffee with Joy Talk Show podcast, and let's grow together. Email us and we welcome back to Coffee with Joy. I'm gonna bring my guest, Dr. Martine, on. Hi, Dr. Martine. How are you?
Hello.
Yes. So before we jump in, can you tell people a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to jump right into our conversation.
Okay, my name is Dr. Martine-Life. I am a social worker here in New York, Long Island to be exact, from Queens. So I've been a social worker for over 15 years now. I worked in plenty of fields, from mental health housing to the clinics. Now I'm currently a full-time school social worker. I also founded LaVenture Consulting Services because I realized that my knowledge should not be contained. There's no gatekeeping over here. So I want to be able to help others and organizations. So I founded LaVenture Consulting Services about a year ago. And I am a proud mom of an 18-year-old with autism. So I am a true autism advocate. And that's a little bit about me.
Oh, wow. Yes. 18 years. Yes. Give it up for motherhood. That is, yes, motherhood. And yes, it's Autism Awareness Month. But of course, we celebrate as well. So that's amazing. So can you give us just like what is Dr. Martine defined for social work? Because I know a lot of people, quite a few people get it misconstrued or just assume that y'all should not do this, you should do that because you guys follow along with CPS. If we're talking about it from a child perspective, right? Can you give us like a defined definition of what you do in the school as far as a social worker?
All right. So as a school social worker, my job is to link and refer, right? So if a family is in need, my job is to link that family to whatever services they may need, whether it is access to social services, whether it's access to outside providers, whether it's access to food in general, right? Access to after school activities such as sports, dance, or even babysitting services, is whatever the family may need at that time to better overall support that student that's in that building with me. So part of it also includes assessments. Not only do I link and refer, but I do provide assessments. I look at demographics to see when we're evaluating a kid for special education purposes, what about it demographically that could assist the psychologist in part of their testing. Because it could be, when little Johnny was 3 years old, he had tubes put in his ears and he had a hard of hearing because he could not hear well. That may have caused some type of deficit in his learning. My job also includes doing counseling, individual counseling, group counseling. I do it more of a social way because, when we think about it, school's not just for learning math, social studies, science. It's to learn how to be better people, right? Or how to interact with other people. And that's not an easy task. So I do it in a social fun setting. We play games, we talk, we laugh. I usually go outside with them so we could be on the swings and having the best of conversations, in the world right there. Or you could be in my office playing a good game of Super Mario Kart. I may be winning, but you know what? The work is being done. So that's a lot of what I do. I do push-ins into the classroom. So I do classes about how to take care of yourself, so proper hygiene. I do how to make a friend, communication skills, how to use your words to do kindness activities. Then we do emotional tasks, like the social emotional piece of it. How to bring awareness in your own self, how to recognize triggers. So I do a lot of pushing classes for the students, and I also teach staff. So I do a lot of continuing education courses on how to create a friendly environment a
Mm.
trauma informed environment, a responsive environment in the classroom for your student, and as well as for you as the teacher.
Now, can you explain what is push in? Because many people are like, okay, what is push in? What does that look like for us, the social worker? Because on the education side, we
Hmm.
use terminologies and various terminology, and some people assume they get it, and they are
Yeah.
so far from it, right? So you can explain what is a push in, just for those people who understand from an educational standpoint.
All right, so depending on your school building, you may have a 9 period day, 8 period day, right? And then that's all spoken for. You incorporate lunch, you incorporate specials, and all your academic periods. So when I come in to do a push in, that means the teacher has allotted one of those periods for me to come in and teach their class.
Mm, So you actually do the teaching as a social worker.
Yes, I do come in and I do the teaching about, again, social emotional needs, whatever that may be. I could get a call from a teacher and say, "Hey, Martine, my class is struggling with you utilizing kind words." So I'll come in for
Mm.
like a whole period and we do a kindness activity, or we do a communication lesson, and we work together as a class. The teacher gets involved and we do that for a whole class period.
Oh, wow. Now, what grades do you normally service?
So, I service the way my district works. We have
Mhm.
an intermediate school, so my building is third, fourth, and fifth.
Okay.
And once a week, I service the parochial school. So there's a Catholic school within the district, so I go there once a week, and they're pre-K to 8.
Mm. Wow. Because some social workers, they at various schools, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
deal with various ages. So I think it's much easier when you're able to see just that group. You're able to take it by the whole to really understand how to work and understand what they truly need. And as you talk about like third graders, some third graders are very advanced. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
pause there for a second. Very advanced. Social media don't make it any better, but
It does
very advanced.
not.
Now, what are some conversations that you do have with students, just in case if a parent is looking and they're wondering, like, okay, wow, my kids probably need some type of social emotional help, right? So, like overall, what are some needs that you do provide or that you teach kids so that they can be aware of what is being presented, right? Because, like I tell parents and I tell other colleagues, parents have to understand they're not raising their kid alone.
Mm-hmm.
Society is raising their kid. And even
Mm-hmm.
though you may come from a high class or, uppity do class, your child is still being provoked with students who may not have that high socioeconomics, right? And wondering, like, that's not for me. Yeah. But this is how you may be pouring in orange juice, but world is pouring in apple juice and grape juice, and you probably don't even see that as being tainted, right? So how do you tackle that? How do you teach kids, or what are some things that you do teach, like the intermediate grades, third grade on up, about their social emotional?
So I do, especially if it's in a classroom setting or in a group setting, I do a lot of modeling behavior.
Mm,
So if we're in a group setting, like for example, my social group is called Chatter Club, right? So
mhm,
if you're in Chatter Club with me, and I actually let the kids lead the conversation, so they may be talking about, "Oh my God, did your class get that spelling test? Because that vocab was a lot for me." And I let it rock. I'll chime in here and there, but then sometimes John and Jack, they take a little too far because Jack has more access and freedom at home than John does. So then
mm,
I'll step in and I'll model a way to reframe that question or that statement that he made and say, like, you know what? When he says, like, "Oh my God, you don't watch this show?" I'm like, "Well, you know what? Your parents allow you to watch that show, and I'm sure they supervise you while you watch that show. But
mhm,
in John's house, that's not something he's allowed to watch. But we can't fault him for that. That's just how it works in John's house, right?
mm.
So it's a lot of that type of conversations
Okay.
that I have with children where they can understand that, yes, once we leave these doors of this family that we have under the school building, everybody goes into their own individual families with their own values and their own cultures.
Mm. Now, do you find that to be an issue with the culture? Because when we talk about New York, we talk it's very vast, right?
Hmm.
It's a melting pot. So many various cultures in New York City, and I know especially in Long Island. Now, how do you be able to separate that, but keep everybody cohesive, but be able to separate their individual needs, or how some things may be played in one may be said in one household is not allowed in another. Like, how have you ever had to deal with that, or how do you separate those various needs, or even
Mhm.
social issue or culture norms?
Well, absolutely, because for one, I'm very, very lucky that I work in a very diverse school district.
Mhm,
I came from Queens when all the student population looked like me and the teachers did not.
mhm,
But working in this school district, not only do children look like me, but they may look like my teachers that are working in the building, may look like somebody else. And so this is something that the children have come accustomed to. So it's not a culture shock in that sense of it. So that right there is a benefit for us as a
okay.
school community.
Mhm,
Then we again tap in. I call a spade a spade. If it's happening, I address it in that moment. I never let it leave the classroom I'm in, my office, or whatever setting that we're in without it being addressed in that moment
mm.
because
Now,
it's important.
oh yeah, extremely important, because
Mhm.
again, and even if it's not, because I truly believe there's a difference between the solution and the answer, right?
Mhm.
So that we're able to, if I'm able to tackle it, we're trying to get to the bottom and then we pick it up so that all parties are aware, that we know how can we make sure that everyone is comfortable, you know,
Mhm.
in knowing that, okay, what's right from wrong, or how we deal with this solution, how do we deal with this problem that we can bring a solution to the situation, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I know in the midst you have a lot of ups and downs. Now, how are you able? What is not how are you able? What is one story, if you don't mind sharing, that has been like very difficult? Of course, if you're able to share, because
Mhm.
we're dealing with children, and it's very case sensitive. Um, what is something that you've seen that was like mind blowing? Something that was even eureka, or something that was like, wow, this has been the worst that I've seen thus far. Have that ever happened in your career, or being a school social worker?
It definitely has because over the years, the access that the kids have and the situations have definitely escalated. Since I also have a clinical background,
Mhm,
I always have to realize like I cannot practice under that clinical scope in the school building. So
mhm,
there are certain things that I see and certain things that I want to say and I cannot say for that reason. And I have to respect the scope to which I was hired to do in that school building. And
mhm.
sometimes it could be frustrating because you know that child needs more,
You're right.
right? And to be able to explain it in a way. And, I had a parent who was asking me, like, do I think this child has this particular diagnosis?
Mm,
Outside of the school, I could provide a diagnosis. I'm licensed,
yeah.
you know, but within the scope of that building, ma'am, I cannot give you that answer. And in my head, I'm screaming, yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're on the money. But in this moment, I'm like, no, do I think that your child struggles with A, B, and C?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
let's see how we could get that answer that you're looking for so we could work together as a team with the outside provider that I'm going to refer you to and
Yeah.
for me so that we're all on the same page, speaking the
Mhm.
same language for your child.
Yeah, and see, I guess we're not alone, because as an educator, parents want us to diagnose, and I said, I'm not at liberty. First and
Mhm.
foremost, I can't diagnose myself. So why am I feeling so to diagnose you? I could give you, these are my anecdotal notes. And as a
Mhm.
parent, this is what as a teacher, what I see in class, this is what I see. Now
Mhm.
you will have to get further testing, who people who are licensed and clinical in that, because it's like parents are waiting for you to say something so they could say, well, Miss Borland said that we need to have this. No, no, no. And like you stated, inside, I'm pretty much sure this is what they need. But you would not hear it from me.
No.
And I like to be very direct, with parents, because I think sometimes parents get away with, us trying to be so, for lack of saying, like cupcake words. Well,
Mhm.
with me, I tell my parents straight up. I say, today you may dislike me, but tomorrow you're going to love me, because I'm here for the betterment of your child, to assure that the adequate information is needed for them to succeed to the next level, right? And sometimes you may not like what I say, because I know you all think you know this profession, but you really don't. Um, you have to understand, even with a doctor, even with the judge, even with a police officer, we're all community workers. So when we're telling you something, you may think but in reality, here are the evidence, here's the fact. I just need you to take this and go see what is truly. It quacks. It has a yellow beak,
Mm-hmm.
but it may be a red truck. I don't know. But this is my finding. But you need to go. And I think that's great to hear, knowing that just I can't call what I see, even though I can, but I cannot. I know as for me, I am not licensed like yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
licensed. And if we're in this jurisdiction, once we under this umbrella, we cannot give that because we don't have the proper tool. Now, granted, I think I feel like so many paperwork from social workers, from doctors, and it'd be 100 questions. I'd be like, oh my God, are y'all quizzing me? I think this was number 86, and y'all on 150 asking me the same question. They don't have the audacity to ask me, do you have any additional comments? NA? No, I don't. I sat here and filled this whole. Now I filled out some quite a few paperworks. Now,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh. Now that's from the social work, from the counselor, from the outside pediatrics. Paperwork is crazy. I
Paperwork
just
is a lot.
and it's needed. Don't get me wrong, it is needed, but from all parties. And it just gets very crazy when I have to just sit there and it's always 100 plus. And just as when I think I'm finished, I have to keep filling out the paperwork. But no here, no there. That's just crazy. Now, being a social worker,
Mhm.
what has been like your greatest love of them? You've been doing this for over 10 years now. What has
Mhm.
been something, what keeps you coming back? What keeps you saying, you know what, I really do enjoy these kids? Because some social workers have horror stories. And for you to work in, don't quote me, I would like to bring up statistics. I'm pretty much sure, New York is the second highest school district in the United States. And now, granted, when I say we just say in the state of New York, we totally wrong because every jurisdiction or parish is different, right?
Mhm.
We're going to say, and the people, if you're wondering, California is number one. So just in case you're worried about that, number two is New York City. So dealing with all of that, what is the joy? Now I know you have plethora of joys, like myself, plethora of joys. But what is one thing that keeps you coming back to say, "Wow, I really do love what I am doing"? What is the great story that you can share with the people to say social workers aren't bad? We don't come and snatch your kids, or we don't just
No, 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 we don't do that.
yes.
That's such a misconception. I tell you right now, yes, are there social workers working in child protective service? Yes. Are all the ones that come to your house or your school building or whatever social workers? No, they're
Mm,
caseworkers. That means
mm,
they took a civil service test and they got the job. So
mm.
let's start with
Wait,
that.
wait, pause that. Okay, you're enlightening me. So you're saying, so casework is different from a social worker.
Absolutely.
Can
Can a social worker be hired as a case manager? Yes. But does every case manager or caseworker means that they're a social worker? No.
wow.
You had to receive your social work degree from an accredited school. And on top of that, you have to be licensed in order to say, I am a social worker. If you're not having any of those, you are not a social worker.
So I could just go take a test to become a case manager
Yes.
and no credentials behind my back, no schooling.
No, no true schooling. You could start off at like a group home or something, like say, so that's your feet getting wet into the field, and you could do that.
Mm,
But as far as, yeah, I mean, certain jurisdictions, I'm sure the requirements have changed, but the majority of child protective service workers, they're not licensed social workers.
wow, I learned something new today. Wow, I thought you had to be licensed in that field in order to erect someone out of their home or some type of governing information.
No, because it's also a stepping stone for some future social workers. You could
Right.
just come out of graduate, not even grad school, undergrad, and you
Mm,
want to get a job, and you could start as something that is entry level.
right.
And it's not to take away from any of your listeners who do work in that field. It,
Oh
it
yeah.
takes a lot, but just to show that there is a difference between a licensed social worker and a case manager. It's that license piece.
Mm. See, learned
Mhm.
something new today. So, wow. Not to veer us off, but I
Yes.
had to pause and park us on the sideway because on the highway because I thought literally that was joined together. Like the social worker is the case manager, but you educated us today on that. So that was great to know. And like you said, not to belittle anyone, because again, that's a stepping stone towards what you need to get to. So I think
Mhm.
that's a great stepping stone. But I thought you needed to have that degree in order to remove, or, to have some type of understanding of why, as explaining, because that's serious documentation, serious work that you're doing. So, but
And
yes,
that's why they wound up being supervised maybe by a social worker for
gotcha.
that reason. But as our it is a stepping stone, an entry level position.
Mm.
And why the burnout is so high, because it is entry level, and for the money that they're making and the caseloads and the things that they're seeing, that's a lot.
Hmm. Okay. That's a part two, but
Yes.
okay. That was just a trail, people. That was a
Hmm.
trail. That was a trail.
But to answer your question, what keeps me going? It's them hugs, man. It's that when you first walk into the door, and them kids crack me up. They call me Miss Dr. LaVenture because they're so used to calling a teacher Miss or Mrs.
Yeah.
So they call me Miss Dr. LaVenture. And it just cracks me up the way their eyes light up when they see you. I mean, today, I know this sounds crazy, but that's just how I do counseling. We were doing counseling in edges today in my office.
Yeah.
Moments like that,
Yeah.
it keeps me going. It keeps
Yeah.
me coming back.
Oh wow. So wow, that's amazing. I look, I got stories for you, but we'll talk off record on that one. Yes. So after these messages, we're going to continue to talk to my guest, Dr. Martine, as we continue to talk about social work, but we're going to get a little further into her consulting business. What is it that she do provide on the outside? And what is it that, is there anything, keep in mind, if there's any questions or answer that you all like to ask, please answer them below. I know for a fact that she will love to reach out and answer anything that's thought provoking or anything clarifying questions that you all may have. So please make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow Coffee with Joy on all social media, as well as if you would like to patronize Coffee with Joy, please make sure that you follow our QR codes towards the end. So after these messages, we're going to continue to talk to my guest, Dr. Martine.
The PayPal QR code, and so that you can find out more about these Q sets and so much more. Let's get to work.
The Coffee with Joy. I'm going to bring my guest, Dr. Martine, back up. Hey, Dr. Martine. So, not only a social worker, but you also founder of the LaVenture Consulting Services, correct?
Correct.
So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Like I said earlier, I do not want to gatekeep the knowledge and experience that I have. I have something to say, and I want to be able to help others when it comes to my advocacy for autism. And as a parent, I
Hmm.
recognize this journey has not been easy. We're 18 years in, and there's still more life to live and things to understand. So I recognize as a social worker and a parent, it's been a little bit easier for me because I know what to say. I know how to advocate in certain places that we've been to, but that's not everybody else's experience. They don't have that knowledge behind them. So I want to be able to assist a lot of families in understanding their rights, understanding what they could do, understanding that they're not alone in this. So I do consultant work with families. I also do consultant work with organizations. If you have a group of staff that you feel needs a little bit understanding on how to do documentation, how to work with clients, how to take a break, relax, contact me. I love working. I do guest speaking engagements. I come and I talk about a lot of the places I spoke. It has to do with stigma. In the Black culture, there's a lot of stigma
Hmm.
associated with mental health, and that's because historically there's a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And to say, like, you know what, I have an issue or I need help is hard because we know historically what that has done when we trusted.
Yeah.
So working with that stigma and speaking to others has definitely been a calling of mine, and just being a support. So I realized that it can't just be contained in a little circle, little bubble that I'm in here in Long Island, near the boroughs. I need to spread myself around and get that help out, get that word out, and empower others. So that became my baby, LaVenture Consulting Services.
Oh, wow. And that's very important as you talked about the stigma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're in 25, and some stigmas that was back over 100 years are still plaguing our family homes, still part of our family homes, going to see a therapist, that's like a quack doctor, just
Mhm.
some of those things where it's beneficial, but it's been embedded in our heads that you should not go see that, you should not go there, you're a quack, or you need, is not knowing and hearing as a child and growing as an adult, that becomes the issue. So how do you help families to break those stigmas in the household?
So what I do is let them know that you contacting me was the right thing to do,
Hmm.
right? If it's about an autism diagnosis, it's okay. This is not the end all for your child. It's not the end all for your family. I always utilize my family as an example. My child, I was told he was going to be nonverbal. That's not the case now. My baby talks. I was told that there's a possibility that he will only be going to specialized schools. That's not the case. He got out of a special education classes and he's now in a gen ed class with just a support period. But he's graduating this year on track
Amen.
to get Regents diploma. He took honors classes and he's going to college in the
Amen.
fall. So, just because you have this diagnosis does not mean it's an end all. When we look at certain things like, hey, you got diagnosis with diabetes, you got diagnosed with hypertension, you don't say there goes my life.
You're right.
No, you learn how to pivot. You learn how to make adjustments and healthier life choices. Why can't we do that with certain other diagnoses?
Oh, wow. Because that's it's sad that we have to, live
Mhm.
in a society where that's something that's been plaguing us, Some things that you think would have been abolished is still here very prevalent within the household. And it's like you have to be very combative. You really have to advocate for yourself as a parent for your child. So your child know that there is help, even though, like you stated, even though you being diagnosed is not the end all and be all, because this just let us know how to pivot, how to get around, how to give you extra resources that you need, And I think a lot of, and when I say a lot of, in parentheses, Black people, I think a lot of people shy away from that because they don't
Mhm.
want to be in that umbrella, not knowing that it's only their mind that's putting them in the umbrella. Nobody's putting you there. You did through the circumstances that you had in your life. So going along, what has been like your success rate when you're working with individuals or family in your consulting to ensure that, hey, you're providing this help, knowing that, okay, they've gotten what they needed, not before, not knowing until they came to see you.
I guess it's the fact that I keep it real. I don't like to use all of the clinical jargon. I
Right.
know it. I don't like to use it because at what benefit does it do to the person that's sitting across from
Yeah.
me? A lot of people who I work with are children. I can't sit there and speak jargon with a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, look at me like I'm the crazy one. Like, should I be on the
Yeah.
opposite side? But I feel like I'm relatable, right?
Mhm.
And understand that you came here, then we're part of this team together. When we
Mhm.
talk about we need a village, we gotta surround ourselves with a village. Why
Yeah.
does that village always has to be a girlfriend? Why does that village always has to be a cousin or auntie? Why can
Mhm.
that village be a treatment team?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I like how you put that, the treatment team, because that's definitely what's needed.
Hmm.
Definitely what's needed in order to assure what you need as you're getting older, and even if you are older, because things could go left, and probably some people in their older age don't get diagnosed. Because I just had a friend of mine who was just diagnosed that she had ADHD, adult ADHD,
Hmm.
and it's like, wow, look how long have you gone with this and coping with this. And now it's not, again, it doesn't stop you from living life. It just shows that, okay, how do we move from here so that you're able to get the necessary help that you need? And it's not so much help that, oh, yeah, you got to be tied down. No, it's just like various resources, how to, and it could be as simple as just to organize. You're adult and you feel like you're all over. The anxiety, your depression is awakening. Now you have this. Now you're finding strategies on how to tackle life and how to live accordingly. So
Hmm. And I could
those,
definitely relate to that as well. I
mhm,
was maybe about 2 years ago, I found out that I was tested when I was younger, and I was never told that until I went out with a couple of my girlfriends, and we were just talking about it.
yeah,
And my friend was like, "Yeah, she just found out herself." So I went home and had the conversation, calling my mom, and like, "Look, this is what my friend told me." She was like, "Well, yeah, when you was in like kindergarten, first grade." They told me to get you tested. I got it. You know, you have ADHD, but I put you in private school. Figured that structure would get you going. I'm like, yo, lady,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know, like I got in trouble literally every day. You
Mhm.
know, it was a struggle. And even it became even more of a struggle because when I got my doctorate, that was a lot of concentration and organization. And
Mhm.
now that I know, it all makes sense. It was literally like Christmas morning and opening all the presents at the same time.
Yeah.
But I've learned to cope and I've learned to pivot in different ways, but the struggle was still there.
Mm.
So when we're talking about the stigma and then not trying to accept help because all we are doing is pivoting and putting a band-aid on this, putting a band-aid on it and sucking it all up, but it's coming out in other ways.
Yeah.
It's coming out maybe, you know what? That diabetes, that hypertension, because we're not living healthier lifestyle, is coming out in other ways and it's giving
Mhm.
you physical ailments because you're not taking care of that mental health piece.
Mm. Yeah. And that's very vital to one. And go to the doctor. You know, health is wealth. Go to the doctor and definitely find out and ask questions. I think a lot of people just don't know how to, they're afraid to ask questions with their primary. If they have, right? They are afraid. And just asking various questions like, I noticed that when I do certain things, this happens, you know, or when I go here or when I think of this, this happens. Those are things that, like you said, will come out if it's not addressed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's how stress becomes, now becomes part of your high blood pressure. You know, worrying becomes part of migraines. You know, those are things that bleed out elsewhere. And you're thinking, oh, yeah, I just have a migraine because I didn't get enough sleep, not knowing that you're worrying. And the
Mm-hmm.
worry probably need to be talked about and probably need to get out. And granted, there could be multiple ways, but like you stated, it's just coming out in various ways. And I think people don't understand. They just think that, hey, it's hereditary, or you know, I'm supposed to get this. This is just part of what they say. Black people have high blood pressure, you know. So when you hear those things, some of those stigmas stay stuck on people, and they
Mm-hmm.
allow it to stick on them instead of getting the help that they need to realize,
Exactly.
wow, that's not what I had all along. And here you
Mm-hmm.
are, 36 years old, and it's could and God's been pinching you, telling you at 22, but you kept ignoring the signs. Now, when He had to force you down, now you realize, wow, if I would have just gotten help, but it's never too late. So, in your practice and everything, what do you want to take your business to the next level? Now that you're here, you're at this point in your life with your business. What is your end goal, or where do you see your business in the next 5 years?
My where I see myself in this business in the next 5 years is, you know, when I think of myself, I cannot no longer think of Martine here in New York, in Long
Mhm.
Island, right? I
Yeah.
have to see myself in California. I have to see myself in Nebraska and Texas and stuff. I have to spread myself and really, you know, get things going. And that's what I want. I want to be able to spread my word, spread my knowledge all over. I want to be able to connect all over. I want to meet new practitioners because my learning is never going to stop. So that's how I'm doing this, going to networking events, meeting
Mm.
people like you, right?
Yes.
So so that's what I see for myself. I see myself writing more research papers because yes,
Mm.
I graduated 2 years ago. I have the doctor in front of my name, but I want to continue to do more research out there because that research could really make a difference out here in this field. I want to write books. I'm actually in the process of writing a children's book because understanding inclusion starts in the classroom at our with our younger kids.
Mhm.
So teaching them about autism because I could count on all of my limbs and your limbs and then some of how many times I heard people say like your kid got autism, he don't look like it. I'm like, what is that supposed to look like then?
Oh, that's
Like
definitely
tell me what that's
yes,
supposed to look like.
yes,
So if
yes.
I teach that and also normalize a lot of those symptoms that come along with the autism diagnosis, if I could do it through a children's book, why not?
Yeah.
So that is my vision for LaVenture Consulting Services in the next 5 years and then some.
Whoop, whoop. Yes, 5 years. Hey, it's there. It's you already spoken into an existence, so it's happening. You just got to chisel at it. And of course, you already know Dr. Martine. So, as we bring the show to a conclusion, what keeps Dr. Martine going? Affirmation, prayer, because we know life still lives. We know greatness still happens, but in the midst, there's a piece of your life that you refuse to not allow happen, but keeps you going to see to the end what the end is to what the end God has for you. What keeps Dr. Martine going?
Prayer first. Definitely prayer first. And secondly is remembering that I I need to be the adult that the child version of Martine needed. So when I'm working with others, just recognizing who I needed when I was that age, when I was in that situation, to keep my eyes open. You know, one of my favorite quotes is that the children who need love the most was shown in the most unloving ways. And
Mm.
I really stand behind that. So I have to, everything that I say, everything that I do has to be intentional. So I'm always working and walking into the fact that I'm going to be that person that the younger version of myself needed.
Whoop, whoop. Amen. Yes, 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 yes. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Martine, for being on Coffee with Joy. Such a delight. Thank you. So please make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow Coffee with Joy. Today was such a great conversation. So if you had any questions, like I stated before, please put them below. We know Dr. Martine will love to reach out or answer any clarifying questions that you may have. So if you would love to be a guest on Coffee with Joy, please make sure that you follow us on our website or you can DM us on our social media. And if you'd like to patronize Coffee with Joy, please make sure that you follow the QR code that's located on the screen. For any amount will do. For you always know, if it's the weekday or weekend, it is Coffee with Joy. Till then, you all live life on purpose and see you all soon.